And welcome back, everybody. We're going to finish out chapter 5 by talking about inverses of functions. Finding an inverse is another way of finding the opposite. Addition and subtraction are opposites. Multiplication and division are opposites. Exponents and roots are opposites. So we're trying to find the opposite function of a function that we've been given. We find the inverse by first swapping the x and the y. Then we use backwards order of operations, backwards PEMDAS, to solve for y again. This is the inverse function. When we do this, our resulting equation will be y to the negative first, or f to the negative first of x. This negative first means I'm an inverse. I'm an opposite. Somebody did some math, swapping some stuff around, and found out that I'm the opposite exactly of another equation. So when we're all finished, this is the notation that we will use for that. So let's start with example A. Find the inverse of y equals 3x minus 1. So we start with trading the x and the y. So x comes first, and then 3y minus 1. So our goal is to get y alone again. How do we do that? Well, first we would start with adding the 1. So we have x plus 1 is equal to 3y. Our last step would be to divide everything by 3. Now we have y alone. So we have x plus 1 over 3 is equal to y to the negative first power. Remember, that negative first power for what we're doing here says I'm an inverse. I am the exact opposite of another equation. Let's try example B. Remember, f of x is the same as y. So that's our y. And so to find the inverse, we start with swapping the x and the y. So we have x is equal to 1/3 y minus 2. Again, opposite operations. I'm going to go ahead and add the 2 to the other side. So we have x plus 2 is equal to 1/3 y. So the opposite of dividing by 3, because that's really 1 divided by 3, is multiplying both sides by 3. Now remember, this side had x plus 2, so we're multiplying the whole thing by 3. These reduce to 1, so we have 3 times the quantity of x plus 2 is equal to y. Not finished yet, because remember, it's our inverse, but this started as f of x. So to make sure we have the proper notation, we write f inverse, f to the negative first, f inverse x is equal to 3 quantity x plus 2. Okay, I want to try 2 more together, and then we will cover a couple others tomorrow in class. Let's take a look at number 3. Remember, h of x is the same as y. So trade the x and the y. Then we have x is equal to 2y cubed plus 1. Let's start with subtracting 1 from both sides. X minus 1 is equal to 2y cubed. Divide by 2. So x minus 1, all divided by 2, is equal to y cubed. And then there's two ways to do this next part. The opposite of a third power is a third root. So we can take the third root of that whole x minus 1 divided by 2. This is one way we could write our answer. The other way that we've learned to do opposite or inverse operations of a third power is by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 3 is 1/3. So we can take both sides to the 1/3 power. The third root and the 1/3 power mean the same thing. So our final answer would be h inverse, h to the negative first, is equal to the third root of x minus 1 over 2, or as your x minus 1 over 2 to the 1/3 power. All right, our last thing we're going to ask you to do before we sign off for tonight, number 2. Show this for points in class tomorrow. All right, have a great night.